Okay, so before we begin installing antivirus on the virtual machine, I want to talk about what a virtual machine actually is. Now, a virtual machine basically it's a program that it takes resources from your primary computer and it takes it as its own, so that way it can replicate an operating system environment. And that's usually used for testing software, or it could be to run another operating system that somebody prefers over the one that they already have. For example, if you want to run like an old version of Microsoft Millennium Edition or Windows XP, that sort of thing. Um, it can also be used to host Linux or Unix even. Basically, a virtual machine is what you make it out to be. And since it can be almost anything you want it to be, it's pretty much like a world within a world. Now, even though a virtual machine runs separate from the primary machine that the host basically, even though it runs independent of the host, it still requires protection like antivirus, and it also requires licenses. That's a good thing to remember. For example, if you want to run, let's say, Word or PowerPoint in a virtual environment, you have to make sure that you have the actual license key to do so. Now, antivirus in a virtual environment. The reason why you should have antivirus in a virtual environment, for example, a virtual machine, it's less of a chance that the virtual machine is going to become infected by a virus or Trojan, and also it protects applications and documents from becoming infected. Now, you might think that crossing documents over won't affect your host computer or laptop, but it can. So if you create a document in Word and it's in the virtual environment and you carry it over to your primary environment, there's a chance that it can, start to affect other documents. Now, it's very important to treat the virtual machine as if it were your primary. I mean, there are test environments you can run, but you always want to make sure you want to take precautions. You never want to underestimate the potential, of future Trojans and viruses. And the reason why I say future is because what we have now is currently under control. But let's say 2 years from now, there's something even stronger that comes out, and that's constantly happening. You just want to make sure that you're protected, and you always want to make sure that your documents are secure. Okay, so that's enough about the slides. I don't want to do a death by PowerPoint presentation, so let's take a field trip into the virtual world and install antivirus ourselves. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and access the virtual machine environment. And as you can see here, I only have Windows 8 installed, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I already have it up and ready for me to log in, so let me go ahead and do that now. Let's see. By force of habit, I have a really long password. And that's mostly because I like to make sure that my login credentials are secure, so I pick difficult passwords so that way people don't guess what it is and I don't write it down. So it has to be something that you can remember, you can pull up easily, and it's something you don't have to write down. That's an important thing to remember also. So let's see here. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use Internet Explorer. We'll go ahead and go through that to download Avast, which is the antivirus that I use at home. Let's see. Let's get out of here. Let's create a separate tab. And it's usually one of the first things that I do. I want to make sure when I'm using a virtual machine that I still have protection. You just never know what you can encounter. I mean, if I'm just testing out software, even in that situation, I still like to make sure that my virtual machine is protected, similar to my PC, my laptop, and my tablet. So Avast is what I recommend. It's free. Well, the standard version is free. There are other versions you can download, but I've never tested them, so I can't say whether or not they work. But I'd probably recommend them. If you're going to be doing some really in-depth stuff. But at home, I don't surf the web too much. I primarily work. Let's see, here it is. I was visiting it earlier, as you can see, based on the hyperlink. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to download. And then this is the area here where they kind of ask what you want to do. And they do show different things that one offers versus the others. For example, browser cleanup. I mean, these three things here are very important. If you want to go more in depth, you want safety against anti-hijacking, pay and bank online. I mean, there's different categories, but I mean, in most situations, as long as you're not surfing some crazy pirate sites, you should be okay with the free download. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that started here, and this is where it tells you what you're gonna end up doing. So here's the installer. You'll go ahead and click run. My user account control barking at me. This is, if you haven't seen this before, basically this is a prompt asking if it's okay that Avast installs, which is great to have this tool just in case for some odd reason, you made a mistake,
Welcome
you didn't
to
want it to, you
Avast.
can always go ahead and click no. But in this case, we'll click yes. We're gonna wait for it to do a regular installation. And this is the portion, normally I would sit here and read this. I've installed Avast so many times, I pretty much know the gist of it. It just wants to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, and I'm sure there's probably some portions here where they're saying they're not responsible if you do certain things. So we'll go ahead and click continue. The install usually doesn't take too long, which is great. I've sat through McAfee installs, Norton, and those can take some time. But luckily Avast is pretty simple. The one thing I don't like about Avast, I mean, if anything, is the constant ads. But of course, if you're downloading free antivirus, you're going to have to look at the ads because that's how they make their money for the most part. Besides when people buy the more advanced features. Now they're offering mobile protection, which I actually did use at one point. I'm using something
Scan
different now.
has been completed.
It is nice to know where your phone's at. And I wouldn't say they're getting a little bold about the protection against all threats. I would probably put none threats there. But that's just my opinion. You just never know what's going to come out next. Hope you're enjoying this virtual tour. This is actually my first time giving one, so this is pretty exciting. Look forward to having more in the near future. I just like to give a visual of what I'm talking about, especially when it comes to downloading antivirus and securing your computer at home or laptop. I like to think of virtual machines as a world within a world, basically, because you're dealing with your primary operating system and you have the virtual machine environment, which is the world that's within a world. It's kind of like the Cosmos, except the IT version, almost like the Matrix if you want to make a technical reference. Okay, so it's finishing up here. There's a few extra steps once it's fully installed. Okay, it's done, and it's gonna launch a quick scan, which is that's the way of the software basically checking for any preliminary trojans, viruses that might already be on the computer, which is great. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and let's see. I'll go ahead and close out of this. Close all tabs. Alright, sorry about that scare there. It caught me off guard also. Basically, that's a vast way of saying welcome. Let's go ahead and scroll down here. And even though it doesn't look like it's doing anything, the antivirus is currently running in the background and it's doing the preliminary scan. Here we go. Now, since this virtual machine environment doesn't have much on it, I really don't see it taking much longer than a few seconds. Here we go. This is our "you are protected" symbol, which is basically what Avast has once it knows that it's in a secure environment and that you're good to go. Now, there's different sections here. I don't want to bore you with too much of it, but if you get the chance in your spare time, if you want to download this software and test it in your own virtual machine environment, there's different things you can use and different settings that you can set up. Now, the scan that I like is you can actually perform a boot time scan with the Avast, and I like that primarily because you can scan upon restart. Before the operating system loads, it'll actually run a boot time scan. Won't be working on that today, but that's something for the future here. Alright, 96%. It's going pretty quick. Oh. Alright, perfect. Sorry about the noise. I know it's probably loud. I have my headset on here. Here we go. Okay, so looks like I'm protected. I'm going to go ahead and not register right now. I'll go ahead and close this out. So that's it. Antivirus is on the virtual machine environment. Once again, this is Windows 8 that I'm using. I prefer to use the desktop view. I'm still in love with Windows 7, unfortunately. I can't move past it. I just actually recently upgraded to Windows 10, which is nice. Alright, so there you go. Hope you enjoyed the virtual field trip.